Welcome everyone to NAPW's eCoaching networking event. eCoaching has taken the stage, not only fostering real-time networking, but also assisting our members through focused topics to move the needle professionally through live events hosted by our VIP NAPW members who are professional coaches. We couldn't be more excited to be offering you more networking and professional development opportunities in 2017. We encourage you to carve out the time and keep coming back to our online events because of its ease and ability to network from your office, while on the road, and even from the comfort of your own home. You will see at the bottom right of your screen, below the chat box, the opportunity to download today's presentation directly from the room to your desktop. Since we only have 30 minutes together today, I want to get our session started by introducing you to this session's coach. Brooke Schiller brings over 25 years of real-world practical experience in organizational development and performance consulting. Her role as Principal Insight Partners. She has worked for and consulted with companies ranging in sizes from small nonprofits to large global brands, including Microsoft, Google HP, Cisco Systems, Gene Tech, Silicon Valley Bank, Gap, and Levi Strauss. Brooke is an experienced organizational development consultant, coach, facilitator, anthropologist, and storyteller committed to fostering brain-friendly cultures where personal insights ignite business breakthroughs. Brooke founded her consulting practice in May 2006 to immerse herself in exploring the connection between high-performing teams and enhanced business results. She ignites individuals and team learning and encourages new personal and professional insights. Brooke received her BA in Organization Communication from California State University. Chico and is a senior consultant with About My Brain Institute and licensed practitioner with insights and development, positioning her to help individuals and teams of all sizes in various stages of transition excel. Good afternoon, Brooke, and welcome. We're so excited to have you. You all are in for a treat.
Good day, everybody. Can you all hear me? I think that's a good sign. I'm getting good feedback. Wonderful. So welcome. My name is Brooke Schiller, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. I just want to say a quick word about what we're going to be talking about today. Just to clarify, what I have planned might be a little different than what you might have seen in your email communication. So just to be clear, what we're going to be talking about today is how to celebrate your core talents and succeed in the 21st century. And I'd like to start this with a dramatic opening by saying, don't be a dinosaur. In our volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, you either evolve or stay ahead of the trends. You either evolve, stay ahead of the trends, or go by the way of the dinosaur and become extinct. So what I'm going to be talking about today, or introducing, is how the latest research in the field of neuroscience will help you tap into your brain-body connection so that you can be the best version of yourself and bring the gifts of your whole self, both personally and professionally. So specifically, I'm going to share some techniques that not only do I work with clients on, but I use myself to celebrate imagination, inspiration, intuition, and integration. And I'll define those terms in a little bit. And that will ultimately help you enhance the 4 skills I get asked to help people with all the time: performance, collaboration, innovation, and agility. So specifically, we're going to talk about 3 skills that I have found to be really helpful and useful and I employ in my own life. We're going to talk about drive and how to be in a consistent state of flow in your business, with your clients, and the work that you do. We're going to talk about curiosity and how to unlock it. And we're going to really work on attitude and how to smash limiting beliefs so you can tap into the power of your own personal prowess and to the power of affirmations. So I'm going to talk a lot about brain and body and bring some of those neuroscience techniques into my conversation today. So I hope that's okay. A little different than maybe what you read, but I think it's going to be an interesting talk. So without further ado, let's continue on. Let's keep moving forward. So as I said, much of my work with clients has been inspired by the About My Brain Institute and the work of Sylvia Damiano. And she, along with many notable thought leaders, are really introducing this concept of the imagination age. That's what we're calling it. Really, this transition from the industrial age, where it was all about manager direct report, where control was about power, it was more systematic, task-focused, measured, to where I think we've spent a lot of time recently, and we still currently are living, which is the information age, where we went from manager-leader focused, where power really became about knowledge, and visionary, people-focused, which is great, but now we're transitioning into this space of imagination. What's next? You're hearing it all over with startups, fail fast, reemerge even better, really where now power rests with ideas. We're brain focused. We're looking inward for tools that will help us be the best versions of ourselves versus models or external tried and true models that have always worked in the past. We're really questioning, are those the things that are going to take me forward in the direction I want to go, given how the world of work is changing. So with that being said, this imagination age really is the theoretical period beyond the information age, where creativity and imagination are really going to be the currency. This contrasts pretty importantly from where we've been, where analysis, logic, and thinking were the only drivers or the primary drivers. So with that being said, I'm going to add a little bit more nuance to this, kind of setting the tone with this notion of the VUCA world, which I mentioned earlier. VUCA is an acronym. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I think you will agree with me that we're certainly living in those times these days. So you add on this shift to the imagination age, and then you add on the dynamic that we live in with this VUCA environment, and that's a lot to tackle. That's a lot to comprehend. And then to add fuel to the fire, we are introducing new concepts, new drivers that are really becoming important in how we live and work today. I've listed the big ones in the bottom right part of your screen. And as you go through and look at that list, I don't know about you, but often I ask myself, gosh, do I know what these things are? Am I using them? Am I capitalizing on some of these trends? Well, I bet your kids do. And maybe some of your clients do, or some of the people that you're working with, and perhaps you are familiar with some of these yourself. But these are going to be really big drivers that are going to be impacting business in the future. So between the VUCA world, these trends, this notion of moving to the imagination age, that's a lot to deal with. That's a lot to understand. So these are going to have significant impacts on how we live and work. They're going to require new levels of performance, collaboration, innovation, and agility. And those are the skills that, in my practice, I refer to as 21st century competencies. The skills that are going to be important in the future, not just looking backward to things that have been important in the past. So not to overwhelm you, I do have some solutions, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those right now. I like to make this transition with this quote that I think is so powerful. And that is from Dr. Martin Luther King, that we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We have no choice but to adapt some new skills to thrive in this new world. So let's get busy doing it. So that's what I'm here to talk about. Not only how I've employed some of these skills with my clients, but I think even more importantly, how I've applied them myself in my own life. So let's make that move. I'm going to start by talking about 3 skills today, because that's really all we have time for. There are more, but 3 that I think have had the biggest impact on my own effectiveness and in the world around me with my clients and people I work with. And those are drive, curiosity, and attitude. These are the 3 things I've seen the biggest movement with that needle on. So let's talk a little bit about finding your drive, the first of 3 skills. And I'm going to make a correlation between drive and this concept of flow. So perhaps you've heard the term flow. I like to describe flow as being together with strength and ease. There's a definition here on your screen. Positive psychology talks about flow as being in the zone, that mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process. So with that being said, there's a direct correlation between flow and drive. When you are in the zone, you're out there making a difference in the world. It allows us to use our inspiration through collaboration. I've got a couple examples up in the upper right-hand corner where it says flow and the yellow sort of sun rays coming out. Another model I work extensively with, in addition to about my brain, is the insights discovery model. And one of the things that I've found to be true in working with teams is when teams are in flow, there's a sense of synergy. They have greater dialogue, team learning, ideation, and some examples of that are in the upper right-hand corner. And when this stuff starts to happen, magic starts to happen. It is really quite amazing. And so what I'd like to invite you to do is engage with me in our first poll of the day. So the question on this poll is, how often do you find yourself in a state of flow? And I got a couple of options there for you to select. And the first is, I don't even know what that feels like. The second is sometimes, but not as much as I would like. And the third is regularly. I am in my groove on a regular basis. So take a moment and select your response. And again, this is anonymous. I'm just going to summarize results. So be honest. And I think you can check the box or the little radio button in your screen using the app, but I'm also seeing some answers through the chat. So take a second or two to do that. And I think in a moment when this closes, I'll have some results to share with you. All right, so it looks like the majority of us said number 2, sometimes, but not as much as I would like. And you know what? I can relate. That's probably how, that's how I would have answered a couple of years ago before I started employing some of these techniques. And so for those of you who answered either options 1 or 2, I'd like you to think about a time, and maybe it's recent, maybe it's right now, where you were stuck. You were just stuck. Maybe you were slogging through. Maybe I use the term, maybe when your eyes just sort of glazed over. And you don't obviously need to answer this out loud, but I'd like you to think about this after we're done today, about what is it that made you feel stuck? I'd like you to break it down as much as possible. Try to name why that was happening so you can feel it in your bones. Because if you can name it, you can understand it. When there's no drive there, when there's no flow, it depletes you. And then that radiates out to the people around you in your work and in your life. So for those of you who answered yes, or I'm sorry, number 3, yes, I'm regularly in a state of flow. Awesome. I want you to also break it down. Think about what makes your eyes light up in those moments and try to name it so you can channel it. If you can name it, you can channel it and bring it into your reality more often. You also may be thinking, well, yeah, I was in a state of flow yesterday when I was in my garden or when I was doing my favorite hobby. Don't underestimate that. There are aspects of even those activities that when you can figure out what is it, break it down, doing your gardening or your favorite hobby, and how do you incorporate those into your work and your life, that's where the magic happens and where flow really determines your drive and how you're going to go after the world. So thank you for playing, and as we go along, I would encourage you to take notes as we move through these, to note how you answered, how you feel when I pose some of these questions. So I am going to move on into the second skill that I'd like to talk with you about, and that is curiosity and how we unlock our curiosity using questions. And I will tell you straight up, I'm influenced regularly, as I assume you are, by books that I read. And I recently read a couple of books over the course of the last couple of years. One was called A Curious Mind, where we really talk about using the power of curiosity to drive our innovation and our invention. They help us drive understanding and build empathy. When we are curious about another person, empathy abounds, and that creates trust and connection. So curiosity questions are a technique that I've started employing in my practice with my clients and in my just general personal life. When we are curious, we get imaginative, and when we get imaginative, we get more innovative. It's really, that's the correlation that I've seen. The second book I'll reference is a book called Broadcasting Happiness, where Michelle Galen, who's the author, talks about 4 main types of questions. And when I read about them, I realized, yeah, those are the kinds of questions I use too. So I want to share this. And they're up on your screen for you now. There are 4 different kinds of questions that you can incorporate when you want to be more curious, whether it's with clients, colleagues, family members, friends. The first is what we describe as digging for gold, what the book describes as digging for gold. So really asking why. It's kind of like our toddlers and our kids when they used to ask us why, and it would kind of drive us crazy, but dig into it. Dig for gold. Find out what is really making that person tick, what's working in the environment. Dig and ask tons of why questions. The second type of question we call shifting the focus. Often when you're in a conversation with a client or a friend or a colleague, you might hear the negative because our brains are wired to do that. But if we can shift the focus from the negative to the positive, that's what shifting the focus is all about. So, I understand that might be happening, but what's good going on in your life? What's good in the business? What's good in the environment? The third kind of question that I like to use is called next best questions. So, all right, sometimes the negative can't be changed. You can't just sugarcoat it and make it go away. So when that happens, how do we move our brains from the limits of the current situation to the parts we can control? That's really where our power lives. That's where we get our own light bulbs, and we inspire light bulbs in others. And then finally, this is one of my favorites. If you're not using what else questions, I would encourage you to do so. You may have a list of questions that you go in and use with clients, or use in business meetings, or you use with your colleagues. But rather than putting all the pressure on yourself to have all the right questions all the time, always finish up with, what else? What else haven't I asked that would be important for me to know, or that you're really interested in sharing? I love the what else questions. It really brings up anything that you might have missed, and often you're going to get a great nugget, and you're going to get it before you wrap up the conversation. So one of the ways I've used curiosity questions is just staying, I use them to stay engaged with clients, even between projects. I use them when there seems to be something underneath the surface with the client that I'm coaching that I want to draw out. I mean, neither of us may know what it is, but these questions help get there. So I'd like to, again, engage you in a second poll here and invite you to answer this one. When was the last time you had a curiosity conversation? And maybe it wasn't using the exact questions I just presented, because I just presented them, but a time when you were truly curious. Was it in the last 4 to 6 weeks, the last 4 to 6 months, or shoot, I can't remember. So go ahead and log in here. Again, be honest. And as we're doing that, I'm checking out the chat and I'm seeing some great comments in here. Like, I ask every day. Sometimes I think that we're related back to the flow conversation. Good examples in here and actions you took. Some people are voting in the chat. If you can click on the radio buttons, that would help us get sort of tabulate your results. I just put my answer in. And in a moment, those are going to come up for us, and we're going to see, oh, great. Okay, so half of us have had a curiosity conversation in the last 4 to 6 weeks. That is terrific. So if you're doing that, great for you. Good for you. Keep it up. I will invite you to reflect on what did you learn and what have you applied since those conversations? Or maybe what did it trigger that you wanted to go out and explore more? And if you answered with 2 or maybe even 3, don't worry. This is something you can do today. So you always have a chance to go out and boost your curiosity. So I will invite you to do that. That's a second little piece of homework as it relates to curiosity. All right, moving on. I want to talk about the third skill, which is attitude. This is the third of the 3 I'm going to discuss today. When you elevate your attitude, you start to tap into your intuition, and all of a sudden you start feeling more agile. So there's a direct correlation between those 3. And one of the greatest ways I have found to elevate my attitude is using affirmations, the power of affirmations. And what they do is, I often use the expression garbage in, garbage out. So if you're telling yourself negative things and you're having things on a negative loop, that's what's going to come out. But if you can turn that around and really talk to yourself about things you love about yourself, then that exudes through you and through your work. And as I mentioned, a tool that I use extensively with clients is Insights Discovery. And what you're seeing here on the screen here is an example of the deeper discovery affirmations that participants can get as a result of completing the process, and really helps us work on our affirmations and building ourselves up. This has been one of the critical tools I've used personally to boost my affirmations and kind of break some of those negative cycles that I find myself in sometimes. And this next visual is from one of my favorites, and probably yours too, Brené Brown. One of the things you'll notice here is this probably looks familiar to you, but what we've got on this slide is if we can let go of the limiting beliefs on the left and we can reframe them into things on the right, that puts us in the right direction to elevate our attitude and then boost our ability to notice what's happening in the world and go out and be the best versions of ourselves. So I don't know about you, but one of my most persistent limiting beliefs is perfectionism. I got to get it right. I got to know the answer. That's one of the things that I struggle with. And when I have that loop in my head, my unconscious mind fuels my thoughts, which fuels my actions. So if you feed your unconscious mind with empowering thoughts, all sorts of things, lights go off and new things are triggered. So I will ask you, poll number 3, Which limiting belief is most prominent for you? Is it perfectionism like me? Is it busyness as a status? And what that means is just constantly being in a state of, when people say, how are you? Oh, busy. Or is it a need for certainty or control, or is it something else? And so go ahead and put your answers here in our third and final poll. And again, checking out the chat here. Dealing with negativity. Yep. So with the negativity one, that's where you can maybe get into some curiosity conversations and combine these skills to find out, how you break that cycle. But then also when there's a point with limiting beliefs where you can say, it's their stuff, not mine. And how do you make that transition? So go ahead and answer our third poll. Ooh, okay, so there's a good mix here. There's about 23% perfectionism, about 17 busyness, 17 for need for certainty and control, and about 8% of the rest. Oh, okay, so I think I nailed them a little bit here. We got some of the big ones. And this comes from just many years of working with clients, just like you do, and coaching, that I found some of these trends and these themes. So going back real quick, I'm just going to remind you of some of the ideas that Brene has for reframing those limiting beliefs. And reframing simply is just that. Rather than saying, oh, I need to get this right, is there a different way that you can change the wording there so that you have goodness in, goodness out? How do you reframe your most persistent beliefs? So that is the third piece of homework you have from our session today. I know I didn't tell you I was going to give you work, but I think it's an important piece and a great takeaway from our time together. So just to conclude on that, our attitude influences how we show up. This is why it makes sense to look at our beliefs, what's holding us back, and reframing them. So finally, just to wrap up, I know we're hitting the end of our time, and woo, it flies by. But I'd like to come back finally, just as a summary point, to the role of intuition. The only way I was able to tap into, oh, these 3 skills really could help me, and then bring that to my coaching practice, was by noticing. Intuition is kind of our 6th sense. It's what we pick up outside of our 5 senses. It's how we make meaning of the world around us. And one of the best ways I've found to do that is to stop, notice, and pay attention. And again, this is just a prompting question for you at the bottom, but think of a time you were able to read the changing conditions in your environment and rapidly adjust. When you're intuitive, you're agile, but you can't just do that being in a constant state of busyness or being in perfectionism mode all the time. So I'll ask you just to note that, think about it after our session today. Finally, I'd like to leave you with a quote, and I am very strongly affiliated with the About My Brain Institute, and with that I've learned wholeheartedly that imagining the future starts in your brain, but having the courage to implement what you imagine resides in your gut, your second brain. Making it happen is only possible with the passion of your heart. So you got your 3-brain theory going on, your head, your heart, and your gut. So I will encourage you to pay attention to all 3 and give them equal play, integrate them. And finally, before you log off and move on back into your life today, I'd like you to take a moment just to think about if you had your eureka moment. Did you have a light bulb moment that went off in your brain today? Something that's triggered for you? And I would encourage you to note that somewhere, put it in a journal, and decide what actions you want to take. I gave you 3 pieces of homework, which I'll encourage you to do, and I think that will help get you off on the right foot. But what's your eureka moment, and how will you take action? And to conclude, I want to just say thank you Thank you very much for being part of our e-coaching session. This is a little bit about how you can find me on all the different social channels. And this is a little bit about my practice. And there's my contact information. So with that being said, thank you very much, and I'll hand it back. Natalie, can you hear me? I think I handed it back to you. Oh, great. I'm seeing that the slides are attached below, so you can download those. And I apologize, I know the slides went by fast. We have a short time. I probably put too much in, but you can access those below in the shared files section on the right-hand side.
So thank you for an amazing session. You address current trends in and out of our industries. Dug deep to discover how our core abilities translate into competencies required to lead in this 21st century, along with how we can use these things to position our practices and ourselves in this ever-changing world. You will see a link to our next e-coaching event on December 19th at 12 p.m. Eastern, titled Blending into Boldly Standing Out. 7 foundational elements that make your message roar with branding coach Carrie Price. Please go ahead and click the link and register now. And also, please make sure to go to napw.com eCoaching group page and join our hosts and other attendees there to continue the conversation on the group activity wall. Look out for our communications for all upcoming e-events. And if you are interested in submitting to be an e-coaching host, please reach out to us at the email that you see on your screen. Thank you, Brooke, and to the 1,000 members who registered for today's amazing e-coaching session. We look forward to seeing you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day.